Hello, Springmore. Can you hear me? All right. That's good. You know what I've got to do. In the event that a fire alarm sounds, remain seated in the auditorium until directed by a Springmore staff member on when and how to exit. Please exit in an orderly fashion. Do not use the elevator. And once outside, go to the red pole. Very good. I would like to call this meeting to order of the Springmore Residents Association and welcome to the fourth meeting for 2026. It's great to see all of you here in the auditorium, and I hope that there are also numbers watching us on 1341. I do hope that there are people out there, but this is a good group, and thanks. Thanks to Carrie back there for working our camera today. I hope I didn't mess. It's all right. I hope I didn't mess up her thing. I had this on him. Anyway, are there any new residents here that have never been here before to one of our meetings? If so, would you raise your hand? Everybody's old-timers? Oh, well, we need some new blood. Thank you, Springmore, very much. Now I would like to call on Kay Bullock, who is chair of the Residents Association Constitute and Bylaws Committee, to come forward and give us a brief summary of the proposed changes to the bylaws, which have been at the postal boxes for the last several weeks for anybody that wanted to see them. But I will turn this over to Kay Bullock.
And I am so short. The approval the Constitution and Bylaws Committee is asking for today is a simple one. It's an addition to the bylaws. For several years, the Employee Appreciation Committee has been operating as a special committee. As you know, this committee solicits funds for annual gifts for employees. The Executive Committee asked the Constitution and Bylaws Committee to start the process to make this a standing committee with the stature and the responsibility that brings. The Executive Committee has the authority to begin a special committee. If its mission is completed, they may dissolve it. In this case, the mission for this committee continues. Barbara, would you do the honors? I'm going to move over here.
Be glad to. I will now she's short. I will now entertain a motion from the floor to accept the proposed change to the current Constitution and bylaws. So is there a second to that motion? It has been moved and seconded that the changes be approved. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, so the change is approved. We now have a new Staff Appreciation Standing Committee. Thank you, Kay, and for your committee. And we also have a committee, a new volunteer committee that's not a standing committee, but a couple of years we'll see how it works, and we may be back at you again. I'm going to now turn this over to Dave Gospodarik, our Vice President. Oh, sorry. I always forget Brad. That is not a good thing to do. That is not a good thing to do. Brad Dilday, Executive Director. Here you go.
I'll be brief, but I did just want to follow up from the business meeting last month. A few items that were kind of open-ended, and I wanted to try to close the book on a couple of things. On Wednesday of this week, Jessica Pagan will be doing a presentation here at 11 o'clock on the levels of care at Springmore. That was one of the questions, was getting some more description and some. So she'll be in here at 11 o'clock to give an idea for everyone, the levels of care, what's offered independent, in the point, assisted living, and in the health center. So if you are interested in that and want those details, 11 o'clock on Wednesday, and she will have maps available of the health center. I know that's been frequently requested, so I think we're finishing up those right now, and they'll be ready for you on Wednesday. If you don't come, they will be available at other places as well, so you'll be able to use those maps, identify where the neighborhoods are, and hopefully how to get around even while we're under construction. So that was one thing. The second thing was the address issue that was at South Village, in particular, 4th floor Creedmoor, happened to be one that had the most issues with identifying Springmore Circle versus Springmore Court and making sure that packages were getting to the right place. We talked with the City of Raleigh Planning Board, and this was something that they apparently were made aware of by some residents several years ago, but it was never followed through and completed. I'm happy to say that has been done. They have updated their system in the City of Raleigh, so it will trickle down from there to the post office and to Amazon drivers and all of those things. So they have updated all the addresses with Springmore Court, Springmore Circle, houses and villas. So they should be taking things directly there now. There were a few little nuances we found out, that things that weren't quite right. So we've got everything addressed, and eventually now, as that trickles down, even if someone was to Google your address, it should actually take them to the correct entrance now. So if you live in Valley, it should direct them to entrance 4. If you live in East, it should take them to entrance 4 over here. But so that'll all trickle down. So we've got all that straight. So hopefully now no more confusion with packages going to the wrong place. You'll be able to get your driver's license and all the things that came into question with that item during the MAC questions last month. And then finally, we are finishing up, we're still on schedule for May 1st, having the new grill tickets that you'll be able to purchase for $10, and you can give those to staff or to guests or whomever you like. So as long as the software company continues to uphold what they have told us they can get done, we will have those available on May 1st for purchase at the grill. They'll be a different color, and there's a few little exceptions for using those, but we should have them ready for you. And then lastly, I just wanted to commend you all. I don't know if you've seen, Carrie shared the final numbers for the Pump It Up for Parkinson's, and we got over 1 million steps here, so quite impressive. Yeah, so good for y'all. I told her next year we're going to challenge some of the other local communities, and I don't think they're getting 1 million steps, so we'll get another claim to fame there. So that's all I've got. I appreciate y'all, and have a good afternoon.
I will now turn this over to Dave Gospodarik with our program as the Vice President.
Good afternoon. As you can see, we have an exciting program today. Susan Brosnan is our presenter. She's an avid traveler and has enjoyed hiking through countries in 6 continents, and her favorite trip so far has been Mount Kilimanjaro. She also experienced the amazing natural wonders of Yellowstone and has journeyed traversing the length of Hadrian's Wall. She also enjoys running distance races, playing the flute and handbells, hopefully not at the same time, gardening and volunteering at the Raleigh Food Bank. Susan is a software solutions architect for Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions in Durham, and has worked in the retail point-of-sale software industry for over 25 years. So when you're at the grocery store and you check out, She's the one responsible. She started with IBM as a developer on the retail operating system and currently works with retailers around the world as an architect for their store point-of-sale systems. She's also co-authored several patents, application solutions. Susan has also co-authored several patents focusing on elevating retail point-of-service speed and efficiency, enhancing the customer experience, and improving auditing effectiveness. She graduated from the University Scholars Program at Baylor University with concentrations in computer science and German. Please welcome Susan Brosnan.
All right. Oh, let me make sure I stand in front of there. I have trouble with moving around, so my dad, who's sitting right there, will give me the evil eye if I get too far from the microphone. So back in 2009, I went with two of my really good girlfriends from Raleigh to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. It was a group ultimately of 6 folks, so the 3 of us, a couple from Minnesota that we didn't know, and a gentleman from Australia who happened to be traveling around the world. So that was really fun to get to meet him as well. And traveled up Mount Kilimanjaro. It took us 9 days to do the whole thing of Mount Kilimanjaro, and this will take us through the sort of the preparation and also my trip. Just to give you a little bit about Tanzania, it has had a really long history of people living there. That is where Olduvai Gorge is, and so where they found the steps of Lucy. So that is some of the oldest remains that we know. I actually did get to travel to the Great Rift Valley, which was fascinating as well, just to know I was somewhere where humans were so long ago. It is absolutely a land of extremes. It has the highest point in Africa, obviously Mount Kilimanjaro, the lowest point in Africa, which is Lake Tanganyika, the largest concentration of migratory game in the Serengeti, so wildebeest and zebras and all sorts of other ungulates. The largest lake in Africa, which is Lake Victoria, and it's part of that. That also stretches over several countries. And the second largest freshwater lake by volume, which is also Lake Tanganyika. So it's really a country with some really amazing extremes of height and depth and size. So just to give you a little picture of what Tanzania looks like, Dar es Salaam is what most people know it was the former capital of Tanzania. Today it's still the largest city, and most people think of that as the capital, but really technically the federal capital is there at Dodoma. We flew into Arusha, which is that town I sort of put in a box there of gray, and then Mount Kilimanjaro is up there just a little bit northeast of that. And ultimately, the Serengeti is sort of northwest of that. So we went first to Kilimanjaro, and then we'll not get to that today, but we did go to the Serengeti while we were there. But it is a fairly large country in Africa and a lot of coastal area as well. And you can see from the perspective of where we are, which is the red box obviously over there in the US, or red arrow, to where we went over to Kilimanjaro. It took us almost really a day to travel there because we had to travel up to Detroit and then over to Amsterdam and then down to the Kilimanjaro airport. There is actually a small airport there, which really predominantly serves for lots of travelers. When you land there, you look like everybody else because you have hiking poles and hiking gear on and a backpack. Of course, it started a little bit before that because we started with having to get a lot of shots. So to go there, you're required to get a yellow fever shot, and you are not allowed into the country without proof that you have a yellow fever shot. But I also went to basically the equivalent of the health department and said, what do I need? So I needed yellow fever. I needed to get a hepatitis A, hepatitis B. I needed a flu shot. They also wanted to give me, it was typhoid. They wanted to give me a typhoid shot. And then I had to get malaria pills. And am I missing anything? Feels like just about everything in the planet. I had shots in this arm, shots in that arm. Oh, and they also gave me something called acetazolamide, which is a pill that basically helps your cells bind to oxygen. So when you get close to the top, that helps you process it, because that's the biggest danger in Mount Kilimanjaro. You don't have to use supplemental oxygen. It is the highest mountain that you can climb that doesn't require supplemental oxygen, but it does, and I will tell you the point when we found out just what it feels to be oxygen deprived. But that helps your body bind to it to avoid edema, because that's the biggest problem is pulmonary or cerebral edema. And then that can really, if you have signs of that, they have to make you go down, because that's really the solution, is to get lower so that your body can get more oxygen. So that's the thing nobody wants. So everybody, we had one gentleman who had to work real hard one day because he definitely was getting signs of it and he did not want to go down. But he made it and he was fine and it was all great. But those are sort of the preparation. Plus, I was telling somebody earlier, I wanted to make sure my boots were going to last, because once you're climbing up that mountain, there's really nothing you can do if your boots fall apart or they're not comfortable. So I got boots early. I got lots of warm gear, because you have to get very warm gear. And then I took a backpack and I put bricks in a backpack and I walked on a treadmill at a really tall angle just to make sure that my boots would be nice and comfortable so that I wouldn't get blisters, that they would hold up. And one of the gentlemen, actually, his boots started to fall apart on the way down. And we held them together with duct tape and like this monkey glue. But that is not the desirable way to take your trip, with duct tape and monkey glue. So Mount Kilimanjaro itself, it's really Kilimanjaro. They don't really know where the name comes from. There are lots of theories about some of the languages spoken around there and what it might have come from, but they don't really know exactly where that origin of the name was. It is the tallest freestanding volcano in the world, which means it just comes out of nowhere and it's just this giant volcano. Definitely not the tallest volcano in the world, but all the others are part of a volcano chain, a mountain chain. This one just bloop out of the nowhere. And actually, back when people first started talking about it in Europe, they didn't believe the travelers who came and said it, because they said, how could there be a mountain with snow on it in the middle of Africa? Well, there happens to be. It is actually 3 peaks. So Shira is extinct, and that one erupted last about 500,000 years ago. And I'll show you pictures of where we slept in the crater, what's left of the crater of Shira. Mowenze is the second peak, which you'll see pictures of as well, which was about 460,000 years ago when it erupted, and it is also extinct. And then Kibo is the tallest point. That's the one that we ultimately climbed up, and its last eruption was about 200 years ago. It is not extinct, it is dormant, and actually when you're up there you can see, I'll show you pictures of the ash pit where you can see the smoke coming out and you can smell the sulfur. It is definitely not, but it's not in any danger of erupting anytime soon. They're not feeling any tremors or anything like that, but it is definitely not extinct. Then also while we came up, there's something that you'll see pictures of called parasitic craters. And those are craters that got created when magma was rising up and it needed somewhere to go, and so it pushed out that way. They weren't actually eruptions, but they created little mini volcano-like things. When I say mini, they're still really tall, but they're not actually volcanoes. And so you get a lot of cone-shaped things, and you'll see that in a lot of places that have volcanoes, where they create these parasitic craters leading off of the main ones. Oop, wrong direction. There are several vegetation zones, and they're really clear based on the vegetation. You start out in the forest zone, which is about 800 meters, to 3,000, 4,000 feet, where you start out, and it's very lush. Lots of trees, lots of animals, lots of flowers and all that sort of thing, and lots of water. Then as you start going up, things get a lot drier. So you get up to what the heath and the moorland zones, which are up there where you have, it's called heath because that's a lot of what grows there, but you can see it's a lot drier. No trees, no longer do you see lush stuff. Not as many flowers, still some, and still some animals, but smaller. No monkeys or anything, just small animals, birds, that sort of thing. Then when you get up to the Alpine Desert, which is that picture up there in the upper right, you still have some vegetation, mostly just birds, because there's not a lot to eat up there. So you don't get a lot of animals because they don't have anything to eat. There's not a lot of water up there either, mostly just what's coming off of the glaciers. And then you get to the very top, which is the ice cap in that zone. And there, really the only thing you see are a stray bird, because there's just nothing that lives up there. There's nothing to eat. It's very cold, very, very cold, especially overnight. It's very cold. And so in that zone, you really just don't have many animals or flowers. So it is kind of an odd thing that when you're big enough, you get to dictate not only where you stand, but you get to dictate weather patterns. It is such a large mass right in the middle of Africa that it actually creates its own weather pattern, which is how it ends up with glaciers. Because the way that the winds move, it's not that it actually normally would rain that much over top, but it pushes rain up and it creates that rainfall on the top. So you get trade winds meeting other trade winds, and that's where they push the moisture up and cause the glaciers that you see there on top. So most of the rain actually falls really midway up the mountain and down, but that pushing of the trade winds is what then rebuilds those glaciers from year to year. And it seems a little odd that right there in this bright, blinding sun, you would have still glaciers. Now, they are melting like many places, but still they're huge glaciers on three sides of Kilimanjaro. And in the very middle, which I'll have some pictures closer up, and primarily that's because they are so big that they insulate themselves. Now, they are melting because the lava rock is black, so as it absorbs the sun, it's melting from underneath, really not from on top. So you don't... Well, we were there in February, which is actually kind of their summer because they're below the equator toward the end of their summer. It was not hot up there, of course, but you still had that sun beating down. We did not see rivers of water. We mostly saw frozen rivers that show that water is moving but refreezing as it goes down from the glaciers. So the trip that we took us approximately 9 days. It was really about 8.5 days. There are several different routes up Mount Kilimanjaro. The route that we took is what is traditionally called the Lemosho and Western Breach route. We started there on the left, which is, so the top thing says Shira route, and that's kind of the Shira-Lemosho route is where we started. And then we went up the western side of Kilimanjaro. That side is the slightly more dangerous side because ultimately on the sixth day you have to climb up what's called the Western Breach, which is about 3,000 feet of climbing up really some pretty jagged and icy stuff. And sometimes it's closed because if it gets too warm, then there are rocks and slides and so forth, and so they won't let you climb it if it gets too warm. So we were lucky it wasn't closed at the time that we went, but it does periodically get closed because of that. They'll make you have to walk around the mountain if it ends up getting closed and then go up the other side. But that side is the one side where you get to actually sleep in the crater of the volcano. So it is worth the slightly scary trip up the Western Breach to get to spend that night in the crater of the volcano and get to see everything up close. So it was about 6 nights going up as we stopped along. Most of the days we were hiking. A lot of days it was 6 to 8 hours, maybe 9 in some cases, slowly. Pole pole is a Swahili word, and it means slow, slow, because they worry about you getting edema. And one of the best ways to do it is to make sure that you don't hike too fast, that you go slow, you take breaks, you drink plenty of water. And so you do have to hire a local guide, which I would recommend anyway, because it was fascinating to talk to our guides. But that's part of what their job is to make sure that you go slow and that you're successful and that nobody gets sick. And so you just go real slow, you take breaks and sit. And the lady from Minnesota, she said, we're off like a herd of turtles as we get up in the morning. We put our pack on and we slowly go. But we all made it. So you climb slowly and you go through those zones that I showed you earlier. And it's really fascinating as that changes and you really get to see that. And then eventually the mountain really appears. Then when you go out, everybody goes out. That route I have, the descent route, the purplish one, everybody goes out the same way. No matter what way you come up, you will all go out the same way. And that's just how they've designed it so that, because going out is pretty fast and it took us 6 days to climb in. It took us 2 days or 6.5 days to go in. It took us 2 days to get out because once you get to the top, then you can just go down and they don't worry about edema. So they just let you go. They just say, keep on going until you hit the camp and then you stop because every bit you get down, you're getting. Now, I'll tell you the one danger is that your toes because it's a lot of downhill. You go down about, I guess it's 19,500 at the top, so you go down about 17,000 feet in 2 days, and that is a lot of downhill, and one of my friends lost her toenail when we got to the bottom because it's a lot of downhill, but It's worth every bit. Those are some of the flowers that we saw when we first started. So you could see at the bottom in the forest zone, very, very colorful flowers. Some things that look kind of familiar. The one in the top, the fireball lily, was my absolute favorite, and that was everywhere in the forest zone. The other thing that reminded me of home was the bearded lichen, so it reminded me very much of Spanish moss. It's not the same thing, but very similar concept to Spanish moss, and it was everywhere. I'm sure it's terrible for the trees, just like Spanish moss, but it's really pretty. And those are the picture there. I'm the one in the green, and then my two friends that I traveled with are the other two ladies that are standing there on that rock. We also saw colobus monkeys, which was fun. That was really the only place we saw animals other than small rodents and birds was here. Yeah, they're kind of hard to see in this picture. It's right in the middle of the picture where you see black and white, but it's tough in this slideshow, I'm afraid. But anyway, they were fun. They would call out to each other, so it was fun to listen to them. They did not bother us at all. They found us amusing, probably.
Does it have a long tail, or was that?
Yes, it does have a very long tail. So that thing you see that's how they guide themselves. I presume, yeah, that white thing hanging down the middle. Yes, it looks like Spanish moss, but you're right, it's the tail. Yes, they all had huge tails, and we didn't see them using it more than guidance, but I'm sure that they could probably use it to wrap around things too. But mostly it seemed they used it to kind of guide their jumps. So food, water, and shelter, I thought this was kind of so the first day we got there, after we got to our first camp, we took a little hike. It wasn't we only hiked maybe 4 hours, so we were fresh, and we said, we're going to walk a little further. And that picture on the left is where we got to, and we laughed. We said, oh, look at this creek. I bet that's our water source. Ha, ha, ha. Guess what it was? So they couldn't carry water up there because it's too heavy. So they had it's not really a machine because that implies electricity. It had no electricity, but they had a filter with lots of activated charcoal. And every day they would get water from whatever the nearest creek was, and they would put it through the activated charcoal. And that is what we drank and cooked with and washed our faces in. We didn't bathe for the entire time we were on that trip. But we did wash our faces and brush our teeth and drink it, and it worked. We were a little nervous, but it worked really, really well. But yeah, that was our water source. Down there, you can sort of see our tents. We had little 2-person tents that we slept in, and those are the orangey ones. And those tents were, the people who had 2 people in a tent that's what you got for your heat source, was both of you in your breath. For the people, there were 2 people who had to sleep in their own tent by themselves, so they did get a hot water bottle, but we just got each other. To the left, we had the tent that's sort of like a teepee. That was the cook tent. And then there was one tent, and you can see the inside of it. That's where the one place we had to sit and eat and all that. And so that was really nice. At the end of each hiking day, we'd sit in that tent, and they would give us popcorn, and they had tea and coffee and stuff that you mixed in, obviously, just with water and so forth, and hot water. And that was a really nice, relaxing. And then that's where we would eat as well, the 6 of us plus our 2 guides. And that's where the porters also slept as well. And then on the far right is a little green tent. And that was my favorite tent because that was the toilet tent. We paid extra to have a toilet tent, and it actually we wanted to pay extra to the guide who had to carry this, but they wouldn't let us. It had an actual little camp toilet in it, and it actually had a little flush valve. It was, for anyone who's been camping, to spend 9 days and actually have a kind of toilet was really, really nice. So to say, now at night when it was real cold, you had to think how bad you really had to go to the bathroom because then you had to get all your stuff back on it. But the toilet tent was really, really nice. So I'd recommend it if anybody goes, get the toilet tent. And those were our porters. They were amazing. That we could not have done it without them. Our guides, of course, were also equally amazing. We couldn't have done it without them either. But we carried a day pack, and then the porters, we got to each carry basically an army-sized duffel that had to have our sleeping bag and all of our gear in it. Now, I will tell you that by the end of it, you're wearing everything you brought with you because it's really cold up there. And you're sleeping in it too, so it gets lighter as you go up. But that was what they carried, as well as the tents and supplies. And we could not have done it without them. There's no way I could have climbed that mountain with a tent and my sleeping bag and everything on my back. I've done some backcountry camp hiking, but not up a mountain like this. So they were delightful and wonderful, and I appreciate everything they did. So then we got to the Heather Zone. This is that second zone, and you can see it's a lot more Spartan, and you see a lot more lava. It's not that there wasn't some lava toward the bottom, but it was less of it, and that's why it was more rich. But now you see a lot more lava, a lot more of that obsidian rock, and we're getting to that Shira Plateau, which is that first volcano that exploded. And so it's really just, there's so much lava there that not as much grows. Over time, dirt's collected, so you get some things growing, but just scrub kind of bushes, no tall trees or anything anymore. And these are those parasitic craters that you can see as we got out of the forest zone. You really could get a good view because you could see so far without really trees. And you can see none of those are actual volcanoes, but they're parasitic craters that got created by lava being pushed out from the center core during one of the many eruptions. And this was one of my favorites. So there were these plants that were like, they reminded me of like some of the grasses that grow here, and you literally could sit on them. We're just sitting on the grass because it grows so thick and so, pushed together that you could just sit on them. And so we just sat on little plant seats. They were absolutely delightful. And also we were still wearing t-shirts at that point. So here is the first time you can actually see the Kibo Peak. So this was Shira Plateau, so you can see around it. I'm up on a big tall rock because we thought that was funny. We each summited, we did a pre-summit up this little tall rock. But you can see in the background from Shira Plateau, which is that old caldera, the actual Kibo Peak, which is where we're heading, which doesn't look that far and that tall, but turned out it took us another like 4.5 days to get there from where this picture is. And where it originally this all came from was, again, that pressure from the Great Rift Valley pushing out, which actually isn't that close, but it's just that much was happening at that time to push the instability in the lava that far. This was one of my favorite plants. It is lobelia, and so that was really one of the most, it was everywhere in the heather zone, or the alpine desert zone rather, and the one in the right is the flowering. So when it flowers, it just grows up this giant, almost like, it looks almost like a pine cone, of course it isn't, in the middle, and that was just really neat, and they were everywhere, and they were like 3 feet tall, so they were really, really tall flowers when they flowered, which I thought was neat. So up here is our stop at what they call the Lava Tower Camp. Camp is a strong word. It just means it was a bare place and we put our tents there. But you start seeing some of these really tall obsidian pieces from where the lava is. We're probably about maybe 5,000 feet from the top at this point. So we're really getting into where the obsidian is really deep. And there's, as you can see, there's really nothing growing here. There's a smattering. It is actually snow down there. So there's a smattering of snow and then just beautiful, beautiful black obsidian rock, which was gorgeous. We did see some birds still here, but that was about what we saw in this for animal life. And at this point, we had started wearing most of our clothing because it was getting cold. But this was, again, it was probably maybe 13,000 feet. So our appetites were still good. We were still feeling strong. Nobody was feeling real ragged at that point. And then this is the next camp we spent the night at, which actually the day before from that lava tower to this camp was only maybe 2 hours of hiking. They were really trying to prepare us because the next day was a really, really long day, and that was the really big ascent into the crater. So they were really trying to prepare us here as we went up to the Arrow Glacier camp. You can see Kibo Peak is sort of where we're heading up at that upper right corner, and it seemed not too scary when we were down there at Arrow Glacier. This other lady and I, the one from Minnesota, she said, "Oh, I'd been so nervous, but this doesn't look bad at all." And I said the same thing. This doesn't look scary at all. It's funny how those things can change when you get on them. So you have to start out at like 4 o'clock in the morning because they want you to get up to the top before it gets warm, because there's sections of it that when the sun starts to hit, they do become unstable. So you have to start out in the dark, basically, so that you can get up through those sections before the sun gets really, really high. It was light by the time we got to those really icy sections, but it was not, the sun wasn't directly on them. So we started out really early, and that's when we were starting to get close to what we were ultimately going to do. And now these are some pictures sort of the angle that we were climbing across. It is about 3,000 feet of between that Arrow Glacier Camp and where we ultimately ended up. And it is, it's a heck of a climb. It's pretty steep and pretty icy. And so, and we had a guide with an ice axe, and that was about it as far as helping us make toe holds in there. And the guide was about 6'4", and I am not 6'4", in case anybody had not noticed. So I found myself kind of stretching out. And in fact, at one point, the guy behind me kind of pushed me across there was a sort of a frozen section going this way, and I hit and I missed the toe hold, and I started to slide, and he just sort of pushed me over to the other side. And so I forever owe Mark my ascent, because he got me up there. But it was indeed, it was a great and beautiful day, but it was a little bit scary. But it was a beautiful, beautiful ascent, just seeing all of that. And you can see, actually, that picture there, the one on the right, you can see where the snow stops. I mean, that's the extremes that you really get in this. It was very snowy, and there are glaciers. And the very upper part of the picture, that's down below Arrow Glacier Camp, and there's no snow at all there. It's just how the extreme this mountain is with the height. So this is one of my favorite times. So this was probably about 17.5 feet. We took a break and had cookies and some tea and stuff to drink, and just looking out, and that's Mount Mwenze, which that's that second one that I told you, the second explosion. You could see that in the distance, and we're looking down on the clouds, and that was unbelievable to be standing there, looking down on the clouds outside. That is one of my favorite memories, other than the summit, of just looking down and seeing that. And yes.
What is the temperature there?
Very cold. It was probably, it was below freezing, of course. I would guess somewhere around in the 20s, something like that. So by this point, we were wearing pretty much everything we had and sleeping in pretty much everything we had, because it was, I had a nice sleeping bag rated pretty low, but still, it was pretty much everything. Now, we were also generating a little bit of heat moving, so that helped during the day. And then we got to the Kibo Crater, and those are ones from a distance. It's actually, I'll show you a picture of the ash pit in a second, but that's from a distance where you can see the glacier in the crater. So there are glaciers on the three sides of Kilimanjaro, but this is actually in the crater itself. We slept about 100 feet from, that's me, give you some perspective, that's me standing in front of one of the glaciers, and just how tall it is. And it was just beautiful and surreal to be sleeping 100 feet from a glacier. And that is, that's ongoing. That, again, there are ones on the sides. I've got a bigger one on the sides, but that was really cool. Now, I will tell you the biggest mistake we made. So this is when we met altitude, because somewhere around 18,500 feet, which is where this is when we met altitude. And we got up there, and we were so tired, and we did the cardinal sin of we lay down. Oh, yeah, don't do that, because they told us not to, but we were so tired. We said, just for a minute. We should have listened, because then when you get up, you definitely are feeling that altitude as opposed to have kept moving. But they got us up, and we went up to see the ash pit, which I believe is the next. Oh, that's the other side of the glacier. Sorry, I had one more glacier picture. That's one of them hanging off the side of the glacier of Mount Kilimanjaro, and you can just see how big that is. I mean, in comparison to the ones that were in the middle, that's way, way bigger. Now, we couldn't get that close to that because that's actually hanging off the side of the mountain. But isn't that wild that it's hanging off the side of the mountain? I mean, that's just so cool. So this is the ash pit. So that's where, standing up there, it was about 500 more vertical feet, and you could look down. We didn't climb down, obviously, to the actual ash itself. We just were standing on the edge, like the rock that you can see. But you can smell the sulfur coming out, and you can see gases escaping out of that hole in the middle, which is where it's venting still today. And I will tell you, we had climbed all this way, and we were so tired and so feeling the altitude that it was like 2 steps. All right, let's stop and breathe. All right, 2 more steps. Stop and breathe. Oh, I'm sorry. So it was about 2 steps, stop and breathe. 2 more steps, stop and breathe. You thought, I mean, we were just, it hit so, so badly. Now it got better. The longer we were up there, and we were only up that night, and then the next day as we summited. But it was unbelievable how much that altitude hit us. And that night when they served it, they kept telling us that our appetite would disappear. And we were like, oh, we're eating like, horses, we're climbing all this. That night, we had climbed for probably 10 hours that day. That night, nobody ate anything. Now they also served us like tuna noodle surprise, which was not the thing that was all that, but that said, I just looked at it and said, there's just nothing here that. It was some sort of like tuna noodle casserole kind of thing. It was the only weird meal we had. We mostly ate very well, and I do not know what they were thinking. Maybe they knew we weren't going to eat it and they were going to throw it away anyway. It's probably a good chance of that. And we really didn't eat anything in the morning either. Now, we didn't have long because in the morning, they suggest you summit at sunrise, which means even only 1,000 vertical feet under the summit, that meant you had to get up pretty early to get up there. And so we were on our way by about 4 a.m. But they had some sort of like a oatmeal kind of thing, and we really didn't eat that morning either. It's just, you just lose your appetite completely as you get up toward the top. It was beautiful, worth every bit, but you do lose your appetite. It was also really cold. So like I said, you had asked earlier, we were pretty much wearing everything we had in our packs and sleeping in it. And yes, that is, my mom guilted me into putting the picture of me that looks terrible because I hadn't bathed in 6 days. And I'm puffy because you get puffy as well as you get up there with it's just so thin. We also, I thought it was, I remembered to mention that we couldn't take pillows. I had a bag, but I didn't have anything for a pillow. So we put our nasty, dirty clothes in trash bags and slept on the trash bags of our dirty clothes. But there weren't many dirty clothes by that point because we were wearing almost all of them. So there wasn't much. And this is us. So we summited right before sunrise. I have a sunrise picture right after that. That is my 2 friends and I. Dad says it looks like we're miserable. We were a little cold. I will admit that halfway up, so to tell you how cold it was, that morning I was afraid of getting blisters, so I didn't put, they make little hot packs that you can break and put in your gloves and your feet. And I said, well, I'm not going to put them in because we're not going to be going that far, and then we're heading down, it'll get warmer. I actually admit I had to, about halfway up, I felt like knives were stabbing in my feet, and I actually had to stop. And the guy Mark, who pushed me across the frozen lake, he and the guide rubbed my feet until I got a feeling back in my toes, and then I put a hot pack in them and to do the rest of it. So it was darn cold up there. And it was a bit windy as well, which is one reason we look a little huddled, and cold enough that actually my camera froze. You had to sleep with everything anyway because otherwise your batteries would just drain because it gets too cold and it drains them. But even having slept with my camera, when I brought it out, after a couple of pictures, my camera froze open because the batteries just stopped working because it was so cold. So that picture actually was off somebody else's camera that they shared with me because my picture, I got a couple pictures, but not that one. And that was how chilly. Now, they don't let you stay very long at the top because the air is so thin up there. So we were up there I'd say maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20, before they were kind of encouraging us on the way down, just because the air is pretty thin up there. And also there are a lot of people that are trying to summit, so you don't want to be standing there and taking their space. And this was sunrise, so that's sunrise off of Kibo Peak, seeing over Mount Mwenze, with the sun coming up over that, which was just absolutely gorgeous. And from there, we then went back down in about a day and a half. We descended all the way down to the bottom where we came out. This descent off the top was a lot of kind of rough because it was a lot of scree, which is that kind of thin, sandy rock kind of stuff that you sort of slide through it. When you come up the other way, you have to climb up that way. We only had to slide down it, so it wasn't too bad. But eventually we went from that, which has nothing growing on it, and scree and barren and glaciers, to within a day and a half, we were down at trees that were, like the size of redwoods. So just such an extreme from the cold and rock down to beautiful, lush vegetation. All right. I hope I stayed. I think I was a little long, but anyway. Thank you. Any last questions? Sure.
Supplemental oxygen.
We didn't, they had a, oh, sorry. Yes, thank you.
I asked about supplemental oxygen at that height.
They did not carry supplemental oxygen. Now, they did have a portable bariatric chamber that they could kind of put you in if if you were in danger of edema. Mostly, they just wanted you to go down. You're not required to take supplemental oxygen at that height. It is the tallest one you can do without it, so it's right there at the peak of what they say is you shouldn't go up without supplemental oxygen. Yes.
At the top, the name was Uhuru.
Yes.
Does that mean something in a language, or is that somebody's name?
I believe it is Swahili, and I don't remember what it means. It is the name of the...
Freedom.
Pardon me?
Freedom.
Is that what it means? Okay, thank you. I have a supplemental there. Yes.
One of your earlier slides mentioned the Olduvai Gorge.
Yes.
If my memory serves me correctly, that's a great place to find fossils.
Yes, and we went, I didn't go through it because I didn't have time here, but then from here, we went to the Serengeti and went out to Olduvai Gorge, and we didn't go fossil hunting there, but just to see it, and they actually do have a small museum there that shows you, it's reproductions, but of what they've taken out and what they found and how they found it, and that was really, really, for me, it was really meaningful just to see there and just to know I was there at the Great Rift Valley, which is something I grew up hearing about, and to be able to see it. So, but we did not do any fossil hunting, just looking.
Animals at the lower altitudes?
Yeah.
Lions, tigers, bears, oh my?
So the only thing, so we saw mostly monkeys, lots of small rodents, birds, tons of birds. They do have some small, they have, of course, Serengeti has all sorts of small, large cats and so forth like that. They have some there. They're a lot more secretive, and so we didn't see a lot of other animals there. We did see a skull of an elephant that had been there for a long time, so it wasn't newly there, but there's a place, the second place we spent the night, there's a skull of an elephant, so obviously at some point an elephant had wandered in there and passed away, and they kind of keep it there marked off because it's a really interesting thought of what has wandered through there at that time. He's going to bring you a, or he'll make you repeat it, and...
I'm interested in the medication that you took
Yes.
for your lungs. Tell us more about that.
So the acetazolamide, and I'm not a pharmacist, so I'll tell you what I know. It's meant to help. I think I know what the effect is that certainly when you drink carbonated things, you taste all of that carbon because it's meant to help your cells bind with that oxygen so that when the oxygen levels are lower, I think you can get more out of it is what that's meant to do. I know one of the side effects is that if you drink a carbonated beverage, all you taste is the carbon because it's making however it's pulling that out of that, it really has an impact on that. And so that's what I took it and everybody else in the group did just to help make sure that we could get the most out of the oxygen that we were getting. The lower altitudes, of course, that was fine, but up there toward the top.
So did you have to see a specialist to get that injection?
I went to a place called Passport Health. You can do it at the health department, but I went to Passport Health and said, tell me what I should do. And so they prescribed it for that, as well as they also prescribed things like just not to take, but just take with me. I got Cipro. They also had some very strong, antidiarrheal medication and some other things just in case, so that because the recommendation from both Passport Health as well as the book I got on Kilimanjaro is if you get sick, try to get home. If you can't get home, try to get to Kenya. If you can't do that, well, good luck. So, but luckily none of us got sick, so we did not have to take any of that other than the prophylactic stuff and all that. The malaria medication was more for the Serengeti than obviously for the mountain, but.
Thank you, Susan. It's fascinating to think about. Give me a ballpark idea of what it costs.
Sure.
Not the airplane flight, but just to hire the guides and the porters and all of that sort of thing.
I would say now this was about 15, 16, 17 years ago. I would say minus the airplane flight, I would guess, now this included the Serengeti, so included the Serengeti, the hotels, the guides, for all of that, because I don't know how it would have split up without of that. I would say it cost somewhere around $5,000 or so, probably for all of that to including hotels and really the food as well, because like many places, they really recommend you do not drink the water, so you have to be really careful where you eat, which pretty much is, the guides, obviously, when they were cooking for us, they were very conscious of that. But then when you're out and in the Serengeti, you really have to stay. There's not many places to stay, so you have to stay in the lodges they have, which were really nice, but not, it's not your budget in. So, but that's about what it costs. Plus, then, of course, we also gave some money to our guides afterwards for all that they did. But yeah, it was not cheap.
On the average, how much you guys lost weight per person? Because you're
That's a good
changing
question.
temperatures, eating, and all strange things. So on average, how much people lost?
You know what? That is a really good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I would definitely say we did not gain any weight because things were looser when we were done, partially because, like you said, there were times when we really didn't eat that much. And when you're even lower altitudes, when we were eating dinner, we were not eating like I think we normally would have. So yeah, it was definitely not a trip where it's not a culinary journey.
One more question. Anybody have another one?
Well, I very much appreciate y'all listening. I love this trip. It was amazing, and getting to talk about it is a joy. So thank you very much for having me.
Susan, we thank you for this trip to Kilimanjaro. Has anybody in here ever been on the top of Kilimanjaro? I've seen it all my life, but this was exciting. Thank you for this trip. Appreciate it very, very much. Now it's time we're going to get the door prizes. I would like to say one thing quickly. Thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you at the RAM meeting on Monday, May the 11th at 3 p.m. The program will be on artificial intelligence, and that is something I think we're all aware of at this time. But since this is such a broad subject right now, and Ms. Stafford will answer questions just like we just did following her presentation. But if you have a question that you would like to hear in her presentation, please drop it in the box, Springmore box, to me at 326, and I will get it to her, but she will be here next month for that. So, but thank you again, Susan. That I enjoyed every minute of that, and I could see it right here. You didn't think I could see, did you? All right, we're going to have the door prizes. And Susan, I'm going to let you, okay. I'm going to let you draw. Where's what? Oh, I got them right here. Oh, no. All right, the first one is 026135. Oh, good. And these door prizes are still from Vidya, who is leaving the bank. So we'll see what happens next time. Wait a minute, I have another color. Oh, we have two doors. This is the blue door.
Okay. There you go.
1479-691. Look at that, Dave Waters. Thank you. Thank you, John. And thank you again. And I think that's all we have to do. This meeting is adjourned. See you next month. Thank you.